Welcome to the S.J. Child Show, where a little bit of knowledge can turn fear into understanding. Enjoy the show. Hi, thanks for joining the S.J. Child Show. I'm really excited today to sit down and talk to Elizabeth. And I'm going to joke about sitting down because the last two times I talked to her, I was standing up and walking around, and we had other discussions while we should have been recording. She's graceful enough that we, were able to reschedule, and here we are. So we are just so excited to talk today.
Yes.
Oh, goodness. Thanks for being here. And I want to give you just, a moment for listeners and new listeners. Introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Hi. Glad to finally be here.
Hi.
I am Elizabeth Tidwell, and I am a menstrual cycle coach, which means I help menstruators really come into a deeper understanding of and relationship with their menstrual cycles, especially how it shows up and impacts their daily life, which is something I'm super passionate about because, like most of us, I think, I have had a cycle for many years and had no idea until the last 2 years that it had such a big impact on my life. Culturally, I think we're just taught to, it's got lots of stigma and it's got lots of just deal with it. It's got lots of negativity kind of surrounding it, lots of silencing and shaming. But I love what I do because I get to help bring so much healing and so much awareness to something that really does impact our daily lives, from even the time before we get our very first period all the way through all of our menstruating years, and then even afterward in menopause. It plays our biological functioning and energetic functioning shows up in our cycle and impacts us so much more than so many of us are aware. So that's what I do.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't agree more. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. And I've never had this topic before on the show. I've never even really had a discussion this professionally, if you will, about this type of, but I love it. I was a big, I really want to just be honest with my daughters. And I saw that it was traumatic for my stepdaughter, who also has another mother, who got different information. And then with my own biological daughter, thought, I am going to make this as easy as possible. This does not have to be this traumatic thing. And so I'm really excited to hear today some, tips, tricks, myths, debunks, kind of thing. And let's really talk about how it does affect so many different parts of your life. And I wish more 10 to, 13-year-old girls would be listening to this exact show. Maybe I'll request moms that they really have their daughters listen with them on a drive or whatever, because this is great that we get to share this information, but how important is it that the right ears are the ones listening?
Yes. And I've been finding, so I work mostly with adult menstruators, but I also offer menarche kits and support for your first period, because I'm finding that even if some of our daughters would be open to this message, it so much depends on how it was framed by their parent and the culture around them. So what they've heard at school, what their friends think about it, how open it is, that kind of thing. So I work with both populations, mostly helping mothers support their daughters, because I'm finding that, like we were just talking about, everybody has had different stories, different experiences with menstrual cycles and their importance and what kind of information we received. And it is such a like intimate topic typically that how we typically pass on to the next generation what we received, because most of us haven't been modeled any other way. So that's why I really love to meet moms where they are, so then they can do so much reframing for their own cycle, which then will obviously impact how the next generation enters menstruation and like the whole package of how they conceive of what menstruality means and what is going on in their body. But that's why I love working with both mothers and daughters together and separately, because it's like it's connected. It's very connected. And how we view our cycles absolutely impacts how we talk about it to others, especially to our kids.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that it takes some people that have the ability to come out and talk about it and not have fears or worries about talking about it, that will help so many more others. And obviously I'm totally fine talking about it. And that's why I want to have this conversation with you and why you're on the show and why we're doing this, because I am a firm believer in some things like are unknown because it's an education rather block, or whatever you want to call it, wall, rather than we're hiding this because it's bad for everyone kind of an idea. That's okay, if we're talking about, I'm not even going to say some things because they're horrible and that's why we don't talk about them. But no, menstruation isn't one of them. And some other women have had hysterectomies, and I don't know what that looks like as on the hormone side of that other end of that. And so in a way, I mean, my mom had a hysterectomy. So that understanding of what I was always going through was the same.
Yeah.
That made it a little tough to have relatability, and have that even now, I'm 47, I'm talking to my mom. She's, in her 70s. And obviously now she's in menopause and all the things, and I can't, it's not the same kind of conversation, type.
Yeah.
Because it's just so different. But then I realized, okay, well, here I have, this other kiddo that now we can start things out on the right.
Yeah. And I feel like that is what a lot of parents find that they're missing, is since they didn't have that model, or like the generation ahead of us was really just, here's some pads, figure it out on your own. Or like, I don't remember I also had older sisters and, a mom that were menstruating. And I don't remember any conversations. Maybe they happened, maybe they didn't stick in my brain. I don't know. All I remember is the school conversation. And that was kind of the vibe was like, that was enough, but it's so minimal. And also like, the structure was so weird. I remember it was 5th grade and they separated the boys and the girls, and it was all secretive and weird. And like, you know what I mean? And so that was the introduction to periods for me. And so it had all this emotional component to it that, like, isn't necessary. And so a lot of times I'm finding that moms today love helping, like coming to me and getting the help to know how to approach this. Because a lot of us want to, right? A lot of us know and are realizing that we don't have to do it the same way that was that we had. And either we recognize that there could be more, or we recognize that just we could do it a different way. So a lot of times, it's just the awareness and the permission and a little bit of prompting. A lot of women and menstruators are like, oh, I I can talk about this, and like I actually do have a lot that I can share about this with my daughter, or you know, in other settings that is meaningful, because it has been with us for years, and we
Right.
do have experiences that are worthwhile and valuable to pass on and share and like speak about. But just like, yeah, getting that permission and getting, I always, with my first period kits, I send along some guidance and resources and conversation starters, just to like do more than just here's a first period kit that your child can have in their locker or whatever before they start in case it happens at school.
Yeah.
But also then let's start with that frame from the beginning before they ever get their period,
Yep.
that this is an empowering, important, and like not this big scary emotional baggage thing. And I think that's, I'm just seeing that so many of us parents and mothers are hungry for this. And so I'm like, love seeing this next generation starting out on the right foot with
Yeah.
menstruation. I love it.
I agree with you 100%. And I had a few thoughts while you were talking about that. And one is that, I've been with my husband for, it'll be 19 years this year. So guess who I've had the most conversations
Yeah.
with
Yep.
ever about
Mm-hmm.
that. And because it affects our relationship and
Yes. Yes.
everything. Oh my goodness, right? He's my
Yeah.
coach. Yep, there you have it. Just kidding. But there was so much he helped me uncover about myself in having conversations with me, in
Yes.
prompting me to look at myself while he was saying, "What's happening? Why can't we
Yeah.
talk? Why aren't we talking the same way as we do those other 3 weeks? And what's
Uh-huh.
happening?" And it was like years and years and years of understanding, and all there were lots of clues that came in, and we found out we were autistic. There were a lot of things that came in, and that really
Sure.
affected our
Yes.
sensory
Yeah.
information. That was life changing and really helped us realize that it wasn't like something that was personal against him.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It was rather something that was so personal inside of me
Right.
and happening with me, that it took so much pressure. And we're best friends and absolutely love each other. And so that I was so thankful to have that. I mean, it could have come 20 years ago, right? No, but it's so rewarding that it did happen. And now
Yes.
we can, and we've given each other permission to be really honest, and sometimes that looks like one of us gets mad about it. And so but it's still there, and it's still, I think, helped so much in my own journey. But then also realizing, and this was my other thought that I was having, you talked about like the kit to have when before their first period. And I just on a blog randomly read somewhere, and I implemented. I went and just got panty liners and said, "Look, I just want you
Mm-hmm.
to get comfortable with how this feels.
Yes.
And then as soon as it does happen, it won't be a big deal. And there won't be this discomfort and this
Mm-hmm.
confusion and this all of these things." And it was like smooth sailing.
Yes. Yes. That's exactly right. So in my like suggested email full of all of these, suggestions and guidance, one of them is like, yeah, get out the products and show them a variety. You can talk about lots of other options. And so the whole idea, just like you're saying, is it's not a surprise when it happens. They don't feel overwhelmed on top of navigating this whole new bodily function, right? And whole swell of hormones, all this going on. That's just removing a very basic like logistical level, so that they don't have to worry about it. And yeah, I include like a little, because we don't know when a first period is going to come. And so some people might get the kit when their daughter is 8 and they don't start until they're 14. That's fine. None of the stuff in there expires. But the idea is when you get the kit, you have this conversation, and then it opens the conversation for the next however many years. And then there's also a little guidance for a refresher that you keep inside the kit for like how to use a pad again, in case, you know, it's been a while and they're at the stall in school, the bathroom stall, and they're a little flustered or whatever. It's just a little reminder that, listen, hopefully you've already explored these products, but here's a reminder, here's how you do it. It's got some diagrams in it. So again, just really trying to make it, like you're saying, the most smooth transition. They know what to expect. They've seen the products, they've talked about it, and now it's just waiting for it to implement. Yeah, because that, I mean, a lot of us girls are also getting periods younger and younger, and it's just like, we don't want to add, like, they're kids still. They're literally still children. Let's make them so supported in every single way that we can. And I super love that you also brought up how it's changed and like your menstrual cycle in your relationship with your husband. Because yes, this has been very big for me too. I have a husband and a daughter who, she's young, so she's years away from starting. She's very young. But yeah, we're all open. Like, she knows when I'm on my period. Yeah. She knows like what happens. We talk about it. It's just an everyday like conversation, you know what I mean? And with my husband, I always like to share this example because it's so indicative of the difference between knowing about your period and its impact on you and not, and how that impacts your whole like home life and beyond. This conversation happens almost every month right before my period. The day before my period is bound to start. I'll be around my husband and he'll be talking, or we'll be interacting somehow, and he always stops and he's like, so are you mad at me? Like, are you upset? What's going on? You seem upset. And I am always like, okay, it is day 28, day 29, whatever, right there. I'm like, yeah, I'm just waiting for my period. And this is just how I show up in the world.
Yes.
One day before my period. So my mentors at Red School, who I trained with, they call that the void. It's that time right before your period starts, before the actual blood comes, where they call it the call to separate, because it's like, I can't engage as well. Like, I've got like, you know, resting mean face.
Yeah, right.
Like I just exude, and on the inside I usually either feel like I want alone time, or I feel like I just feel quieter and more withdrawn, and more like your awareness and energy turns inward because all this stuff is going on in your body. And so on the outside to other people, it can appear like, you know, you're agitated or you're not. We just don't give as many of the social cues that say we're happy and everything's fine and easy, because honestly, it's not. It's not fine and easy right then. We're feeling the call to separate in the void, where it's like, we just need space. We just need time alone. We just need like a little more support. Anyway, so that conversation happens almost monthly. And every time it is a 1-minute conversation, because I can just say, oh, I'm glad you noticed. I'm about to start my period. I'm on this day. So nothing is about you at all. And I don't get offended that he's asking me if I'm mad at him. He doesn't get offended assuming that I'm mad at him. Like, it is smooth sailing, like you said. Like, it just makes it so much easier. And then again, we can, you know, I talk about it with my daughter, and it's just like, hey, I'm laying down a lot more for the next couple days. This is what's going on. This is how I'm feeling. You know, please don't jump on me. I'm not feeling that excellent, and this is why. And yeah, it's just so much more open conversation in the family is wonderful, but also so much more support and understanding for me. And then that also supports them, because like, my daughter's going to enter menstruation so much better. And my husband also knows that I'm not just like mad at him. You know what I mean? And that he can always ask me. And that's just a layer of context that's coming into play. It's not everything, right? There's always many layers of context in our lives, but that's one that does have an impact that most of us just aren't aware of. So I always like to share that because honestly, before I know about menstrual cycle awareness, I did used to like, it used to be that conversation used to come with more friction because we would take it personally, especially because like at that time of my cycle, I am just more vulnerable and like, touchy,
Yeah.
and a little grumpy, my body's going through a ton. And so, or he would get offended, you know what I mean? Like, but now it's none of that. It's a simple 1 minute conversation and we now are on the same page easily. And I love sharing that because it's that simple.
And it is. And, I think that even over time, I'm just almost 50, 47, just turned 47. Funny enough, I'm sure that he keeps better track of the days than I do, but they've lessened too. It's like 21 days for me now. And so the times are changing, and then I'm not, I'm like used to it being one way. And then stress. Let's talk about all the things that can change
Yeah.
the date or the, heaviness or the, sensitivities around those types of things too. That's a lot to deal with. But in that same breath, now I'm also noticing how we are syncing up in my daughter and I in time frames. And so I'm also trying to be aware and supportive of her in that same pre-menstrual time to say, okay, no, here's these pampering work great for me. Like, give it a try. It helps with your mood. Like they really they do great. They work wonders. And so I think that having kind of a tool or resource and to be able to also draw from, and it's really hard to please everyone at the same time, but also self-care.
Yes.
But it's most important for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing that I offer in my Club Red, I'm glad you brought up self-care because that's like a huge foundation of what I do. So I also have a monthly period self-care subscription box so that women and menstruators can get this box delivered to their door with like wonderful hormone-friendly items that help us again push against that cultural narrative that getting your period sucks and you're out for the count and you just want to be left alone and eat, a gallon of ice cream, like all the things that we see in the movies and just like cry and be mad at everyone, which sometimes happens for sure. But instead of being like, oh, my period's coming, I love rewriting this cultural message to then get, oh, look, I'm looking forward to my period because then my Club Red box comes, which gives me a whole bunch of supportive items where instead of having a period where I'm feeling crappy the whole time and I'm like bummed that I can't go do the things that I wanted to do or don't feel good, instead, I can take this as an opportunity to nurture my body and like check in and tune in and reflect on my month and see like what maybe is making my period more painful this month. You talked about how stress impacts it, and that is the number one reason why we have menstrual irregularities and pain is stress throughout the month. And so yes, like if we can change that by having this supportive self-care routine with our period where it takes some of the pressure to, also the cultural pressure to go on your period and act like it's not happening. It is happening and it's okay that it's happening and it's okay that you might need a little more time to yourself, and let's make that nurturing time to yourself. So like you've brought up all of these things that I'm super passionate about and really hope to deliver to menstruators and help so many more of us have a better relationship with our period and a better experience of our period. with this education and like, again, just a box of support. So I'm so passionate about that because that actually using my period. So your menstrual phase when you're bleeding is the natural rest phase of your cycle. So this is, you can think of it as like your own inner winter. So if you think about what's happening in nature in winter, everything's in hibernation, and that's like we are nature too, and that's our own inner winter. Every single month we get a little pause, we get a little break. Our hormones are at the lowest, so this is when we want to, but that's when we just need a break and a reset and a recharge. This helps us like guard against burnout. This helps us not give too much of our energy away to other people and projects and work and things like that, that we, again, like culturally are taught that we need to be doing all the time. This is just like, instead of being outward focused on supposed to's, this is like, let's tune into what our inner nature actually is and capitalize on that. So yeah, the menstrual phase is a rest time. And I used to have super, super, super painful periods. And when I started implementing this stuff, even just the basic understanding of I'm going to rest on my period, that alone has transformed how much pain I experience, like physical pain I experience on my period. They are so much less painful when I make the priority and the space to honor what my body needs at that time, which is most of the time some significant rest. So like I mentioned, I lay down a lot more. Most of the time I'm home with my daughter, and we just like do more things that I can do sitting or laying, or I get babysitters. I try to plan ahead so that I can make space for rest. And again, she sees all of this and she's going to know that it's like, it's okay. And it's beneficial to take care of myself when I'm on my period.
Yeah.
And to make space for that instead of, again, begrudging it or complaining about it or like, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, I love that. And man, my brain, it's just in this, it's in the great flow right now. So first off, I want to go back and preface, I'm not a doctor. Elizabeth, you're not a doctor, right?
I'm not a doctor. Yes.
But we are women, and this is from my personal experience. I'm prefacing this personal experience. When I was younger, and the same thing had lots of pain and lots of, obviously I wasn't taught to embrace or, but it was constant birth controls, constant birth controls. And I was so inundated with all of this medication all of the time. And I hated it. And I think I knew that it was making my body so much worse overall than if I had just been able to learn how to embrace my femininity, learn how to embrace my own. As another thought I was having when you were talking, I really believe in like lunar cycles, and not for my menstrual cycle. Sometimes they match, sometimes they don't, because then again, everything can throw anything off. But lunar cycles are always the same. And what comes with a lunar cycle are different changes in chemicals that your body is reacting to at a different time each month. And oftentimes when it is a full moon and it is dopamine that's running through my body, and I do want to sleep and I don't want to do the dishes, and I've tried to take advantage of that information and that practice and schedule my time off. If I know it's going to be a full moon, well, I'm going to take the week off, because once I get there, I'm going to be less likely to want to pursue a lot of things. And I think that and my son, who is autistic, taught me how to follow this lunar cycle in his own sleep schedule.
Very cool.
He is so affected by his own chemicals that it was smarter for me to follow his biology and understand what was going on with him rather than over medicate.
Yeah.
So give him
Yeah.
society's ideas of every time he has to be awake and eating a sandwich. Like
Mm-hmm.
all of these outdated ideas
Yeah.
and myths, if you will, right?
Yeah.
So
Um,
yeah, I just think that was really interesting.
I love that. And there's two things I really want to talk about with that. One, I'm gonna piggyback on the moon stuff that you were just chatting about. Yes, our hormones are so impacted by light. And so our hormones are impacted by sunlight, our hormones are impacted by moonlight, our hormones are impacted by artificial light. And so in our modern world, where we often disrupt our natural hormonal pattern the way it used to be before all we were inundated with artificial light and like constant light everywhere, our hormones actually really need darkness to well in the right pattern, right?
Yeah.
We need darkness at night so our hormones can regulate. And we need sunlight in the morning so our hormones can regulate. And it impacts the natural pattern. So yeah, kind of like really paired with that, the idea of birth control, or even like the idea of the societal supposed tos, I kind of view those as like, in practical terms, they essentially, the impact is they separate us from our own patterns, from our own individual needs, and from our own connection to our own body's wisdom. And so whether that's again like with light and like just overriding the natural light cycle by having electronics on throughout the night or that kind of thing, we're overriding our own body's needs. And I love that you tuned into your son's like innate needs and responses to the moon. I love that. And then that's essentially a similar thing happening with birth control, because it's so overprescribed, because doctors really are not taught much about female reproductive health honestly. And like there's a long history of a whole bunch of medical research not being done on cyclical bodies and only being done on male bodies, because for decades and decades and decades, they just didn't include women in a lot of medical research, because they our hormonal pattern is
Because
complex and they
you,
viewed it as
right?
too complex
Yeah.
to have a good study. And so it's like,
I
unless you're looking at studies that specifically say that they're done on women, um most of the time they're just done on men. And so there's a whole bunch of our world that is not designed with women in mind. And just like we're expected to fit into the male hormonal pattern, we're expected to fit into a whole bunch of stuff, even with our health. And so the birth control pill, which I mean, like, I am all for, everybody gets to decide what methods
Absolutely.
of things throughout their life, not only in this
Yes.
area, are right for them. And I definitely, there's situations where it's like, yeah, the pill is maybe, I can see why you'd want that choice for you right now. That's fine. But it is important to know, because like I was saying, a lot of doctors were not actually educated on the impacts of birth control and the effects and what actually it does. And so as patients, we have no informed consent, because we were not informed about what those impacts are going to be. And so we end up on hormonal birth control, not realizing that a lot of the time they're suppressing ovulation entirely, which impacts our hormones. And we don't get the progesterone from ovulation. And I could go into all of that, but it's like we had no idea that that was what was going to happen to us. We were just given a pill because it's like, oh, this will either regulate you, or this will help your hormones, or this will help your painful periods, when really all it does is separate us even further from listening to our own bodies.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I'm always blown away at how powerful the mind body connection is, because like I said, I had super powerful periods, powerfully painful periods. And then sometimes, I mean, this isn't the case every single time, but like I'm always so shocked that very often, if I just like tune into my body and ask what it needs, a lot of times it's rest. And when I give it to it, I give rest to my body, a lot of my pain goes away. Like it's honestly pretty mind blowing. But that was not the relationship I had with my body in when I was on birth control, because that's like, it's a whole different model. It's designed to do the opposite of that. It suppresses not only our relationship with our body, but our whole hormonal system. And I think that's a really important thing to, especially as parents, to recognize too, because girls younger and younger are being prescribed hormonal birth control because, one, again, a lot of parents were prescribed that. So it's just what you do. Yeah. And culturally, it's like what you do. And also, I mean, we just don't know that when you first get your period, it is a brand new system coming online for your body, and it takes years to regulate. Mm-hmm. So it's not a sign most of the time. Some of the times you might need to look, go to a doctor and see if there's something else going on. But most of the time, you can anticipate that your child's period will not be, the typical 28-day perfect, in air quotes, cycle, painless or whatever. These ideas of the perfect regular menstrual cycle, that's going to take years to regulate. And if we, just because, again, it's a new system in the body, it's got to come online and like fully work out the kinks, and it's going to take a while. And expecting that means that hopefully you'll give it time instead of throwing a pill at it really fast, because doctors, honestly, that's their one solution. They don't have much else in by way of that. So if we anticipate that, because again, if your hormones are just barely starting up and like starting to regulate, but we interrupt that natural regulation time with a pill that suppresses that and it changes the hormonal pattern, then your body's going to take so much longer in the future to re-regulate because it never got the chance to work out its own kinks in the beginning. And also, like, there's just so many ways to work with our reproductive system that we weren't aware of even, like 5-10 years ago, 2 years ago. Like, there's so much more support available. And I mean, like, coaches like me, it's a very new field. So I get it if parents aren't aware of it. Very common. But I always like to remind parents that to anticipate that it's going to take years, and that is okay, before taking drastic changes that can have really big impacts long-term on their hormonal functioning.
Well, and I really think that, when you are given the permission to be allowed to be investigative, be curious about your body, be understanding about the system. I love that you said putting the system online. I love that you said that. It's great. And also really learning how to listen to your body's other symptoms that might occur. And I've so many women that I know personally suffer from migraines and have a lot of, issues surrounding that. Well, my personal experience with migraines was that after this whole lunar cycle research I had done, and taken all this time to discover all of these patterns and kept charts and notes and all these things.
Love that.
My husband said, Sarah, why haven't you researched why you're getting migraines? Like, why are your migraines coming? And I was like, duh, I gotta get, I'm gonna chart this. I'm gonna make sure, what side are they coming on? Where is it affecting me? What's going on? What time of the month is it? What day is it? Oh, okay, wait a second. A pattern is emerging.
Yeah.
What's happening? Well, how many doctors do you go to? And what's going on, and you tell them your story, and they're like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, that's
Yes.
voodoo, but okay, right? And you're like,
Uh-huh.
no, it's true. And it wasn't until I finally just had not had enough, but was like, okay, I've already gotten this far with all the research that I'm doing for myself. Like, now let's find some natural ways to try to counteract this
Mm-hmm.
occurrence happening for me. And for me, it was exactly that time, that estrogen, the drop off point
Mm-hmm.
right there. It's in those
Mm-hmm.
moments that, I
Yes.
can like, it's happening. And so I went to a neurologist. Sat down. We talked about all of the things. I told her, look, this is all the research I've done. And she was impressed. Wow. Oh my gosh. I've never seen anybody do like this kind of. I told her, like, I want some type of estrogen supplement or something. I need something. And she said, well, we can't do that because, we don't want to encourage cancer and things like that.
Yeah,
So great.
there's lots of
But
complications there.
yes. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm smart enough to know that there are estrogen based, plant based items in the world, like soy, for
Mm-hmm.
example. And I thought, well, what could I do? What would that look like? Like, what could I implement there? So I started just buying soy milk and drinking like chocolate soy milk. And it really helped me. It helped me. And I forget all the time. Like I'll go months and months and months without buying it and forget about it and get tons of migraines and duh, you're not listening to your own research and knowledge
Yes.
because we get in our lives and we can't, even though we know something and it works like great, sometimes if we don't practice it every day and in discipline, then it's out the
Yeah.
window, right?
Yeah.
It's just like that.
Absolutely.
Guilty as charged, but at the same time, just the giving myself the understanding that, like, I didn't have to take another pill. I didn't have to do all of these other things, but I
Yeah.
could find something that works for me naturally in the way that I believe works
Yeah.
best.
And like
And
outsource that responsibility and like ability to help yourself. Like
yeah,
that was internal, right? I love that.
yeah, it really did help me understand too, like, and now here we are, we'll be teaching a whole nother generation and hopefully in the beginning and being able to embrace that time that, they need, they'll be able to start self healing and self care before it turns into trauma healing or anything
Yeah.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Um, yes, there's so much. I love that um one, you did so much research, and two, like figured out what works for you. And three, yes, it's very common that like before you mentioned anything, I was like, oh, I bet it's the dropping hormones that are triggering migraines, because that's very common. And our bodies have to, it's like they're constantly trying to recalibrate with less and less of estrogen, and then later like less and less of progesterone too, right? But right before our periods, both hormones um are really big like boosts and like feel good hormones. And so when both of them are dropping the week before our period, our body's doing a lot of work recalibrating not having that boost. And so it can manifest in tons of ways. And that's why we get cranky. That's why we get pain. That's why we get moody, because it's like it sucks, right? And that's why we get headaches and migraines. But and it's also like that process is days long in women and menstruators, whereas it's also important to realize that the male hormonal pattern, they reset every 24 hours. They don't have something that lasts a week or days or the full month, you know what I mean? So again, society isn't really set up to even look for that. But I love that you're like, I'm gonna start looking for patterns and realize that yes, okay, this is playing an important role at a specific time in my cycle. um and then the other thing that I really want to like highlight too is how individual menstrual cycle like insights can be. because most of us have excess estrogen because of our modern lifestyle has lots of like endocrine disruptors, which in our body, they act as estrogen. So a lot of people have excess estrogen, which is causing the problems. But for you, you noticed that you needed that boost at that certain time of your cycle, which maybe other people don't. It'll manifest in different ways. Everybody is individual. And so it's, yes. So like tuning into your own, my coaching is very much, you are your own authority, and I can support you in being your own authority, and I can show you some resources, and I can walk you through. But like, this is not about, I'm the guru and you do exactly what I say. This is about, no, you are your own authority. And let's see how the wisdom can arise from your own intuition, your own body, your own experiences, and like fine tune that in a way that like it's empowering, right? When you're like, hey, I know what I need and I'm going to do that. And it is this simple to listen to my body and like actually find the support and the boost that I need at this time of month. How wonderful. And again, how different than so many of us have ever experienced with the medical system or culture at large, is just like outsourcing everything, when really I feel like we're feeling a huge pull now to stop outsourcing and just instead focus on like individuals have their own power, and like everything's not a one size fits all. The menstrual cycle and our hormonal pattern, it's really complex. Like there's a lot going on there, and our modern life is really complex, and everybody's individual lives are really complex. So of course it's not going to be a one size fits all. I love that example.
Yeah. Oh man, I couldn't have said it better myself. And there's billions of people in the world, and my son probably knows the percentage of male and female, but I'll pretend to know that. But we know that at least, partially half or so. But
sure.
That is so many people that, if given this information and the empowerment and the space and the understanding and grace to do so, could make such a big difference in not only their lives, but the lives of their family, the lives of their employers, the lives of their friends, and they're passing along this message.
Ripples,
love,
right?
Love,
yes.
Self-love and self-purpose. And really, isn't that really what this all comes down to and boils down to? This is our purpose.
Yep. And then again, these ripples of self-compassion help you bring compassion to others, right? And then again, if we're doing this individually, in families, in workplaces, in communities, we're going to impact the larger culture, right? Which is our main force that we're like butting up against right now, is that most of us just haven't been taught or modeled or given permission or even like the awareness that this is a more empowered way to be. So yeah, like starting with our own bodies and our like this deep self-nurturing, self-connection, self-awareness, even like it starts with even knowing about our bodies, right? That is huge ripples that can ultimately, my goal is like, let's change how we function as a society with more empowered individuality instead of one size fits all, lots of supposed to's that really just don't serve so many of us.
Yeah, 100%. Oh my goodness. This has been just really powerful. I can't believe it. The time has gone by so fast. But I am just so grateful that we were able to finally make this connection and really have this wonderful conversation. Tell people where they can go to reach out to you and to learn more and to get the boxes, all the good stuff.
Yeah, everything is on my website, which is myclubred.com. You'll find ways to work with me, items if you want to shop either for yourself and or child if you have them. And yeah, reach out to me there. I'm also on Instagram at My Club Red. I'm pretty active there if you are a social media kind of person, but both are just My Club Red. So pretty easy.
Wonderful. Oh, it was such a great conversation. And I think it just really had a lot of value in so many different ways to embrace yourself as a woman,
Mm-hmm.
embrace your individuality. And maybe if you are a man and you're listening, really learn how to embrace your wife or your daughter in a new way that is more affirming to them that you understand humanity. And that, this is really what we, like I said, millions and millions of women are going through every single second of
Yep.
every day. So
Yep.
thank you so, so much for your time. And I hope that now we've started this Let's Talk Zoom, we better just continue doing so.
Yes. Yes. It's such an important conversation. And like you were saying, it impacts all of us because every single day we are somewhere in our cycle and it's showing up, right? In our relationships, in what we have going on, what we show up in the world with. And so, yeah, like this is an important, always relevant conversation.
I love it. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
And
Thanks for having me. This was great.
I loved it. We'll be in touch for sure.
Perfect.